Hello, and welcome to the Engagement and Assessment module, part of the Fall 2020 Return to School Action Team. My name is Sarah Rosine, and I'm the principal of North Davis Elementary School. It has been my pleasure to facilitate this team with Scott Thompson, principal of Emerson Junior High School. I'd like to first honor and recognize the dozens of staff members who came together this summer to develop this module. Thank you for your expertise, hard work, dedication, and professionalism. In this module, we will identify best practices as they relate to teaching and learning in a distance or hybrid model in the areas of lesson design and effective instruction, feedback and assessment, engaging video conferencing, all through a lens of equity, inclusion, and culturally responsive teaching. We would like to acknowledge that this module is a work in progress and an introduction to the best practices you will see highlighted here. It was our intent to start the process of collecting resources, providing examples, and setting the stage for continued professional development in these areas that will last well into the school year and beyond. Thank you for engaging with us today, and we hope you find value in the presentation, the shared resources, and the upcoming opportunities to collaborate with your colleagues on innovative and effective best practices within a distance or hybrid learning model. I'd like to now turn it over to Janice Brailer to get us started.
Thank you, Mrs. Rosine. My name is Janice Brailer. I'm a fourth grade teacher at North Davis Elementary. We would like to invite you to engage in this module through the lens of culturally responsive teaching. Take a moment. We want you to think about what culturally responsive teaching means to you. According to Zaretta Hammond, a renowned culturally responsive educator, one definition of culturally responsive teaching is about helping culturally and linguistically diverse students who have been marginalized in school build their skill and capacity to do rigorous work. Throughout this engagement and assessment module, look for this picture to notice what culturally responsive teaching strategies and practices you already incorporate with students and new ones that you can implement. Thank you for joining us on this endeavor. I would now like to introduce Janelle Campbell.
This is Janelle Campbell. I'm proud to be a first grade teacher at Pioneer. We will continue by sharing learning design for hybrid and distance learning instruction by discussing the following 5 best teaching practices: engagement routines, discourse and feedback, student-centered, inquiry and phenomenon-based, critical thinking. We will also share resources to align your classroom teaching to your online teaching.
Thank you, Janelle. I'm Nikki Reynagera, Differentiation Specialist. The first best practice we are highlighting, and one that is best integrated with other practices, are engagement routines. These are tasks or strategies that effective teachers employ throughout a lesson to keep student interest high, to allow for interaction between students, and for giving students different kinds of cognitive tasks. There are several categories of such practices, and our list is hardly exhaustive. The first is social-emotional engagement strategies. Of these, it is important to intentionally welcome your students, and this practice is just as important digitally as it is in person, where we open each class meeting or period with a welcoming inclusion activity. Offer brain breaks during long periods of concentration, and end lessons with an optimistic closure involving ideas moving forward. Other engagement practices include tasks that develop competence strategies or practice, providing opportunities for students to interact with others and work in groups, opportunities for students to exercise voice and choice, which means choosing how to show their learning, and engaging in predictable but changing learning routines, such as with math and language. I will pass the mic to Ingrid to share the next slide.
Hi, I'm Ingrid Salim. I'm a science teacher in Davis Joint Unified and at TOSA. I currently teach at North Davis Elementary and at Emerson. This slide is about a second best practice, and there's no prioritization or order, although they certainly are all overlapping in every way. This particular best practice in classroom instruction is about discourse and feedback between students and with them. And it's also an engagement strategy because we know that all humans like to talk, but students particularly do need to talk. So we're focusing here on their participation in what we call productive dialogue. So productive dialogue is conversation with small numbers of peers that are academic in nature and responding to specific prompts or working out specific ideas. These are not about general chit chat. So there's a difference between them. Talking through ideas helps all students begin to make sense of what they're learning. And because more students are involved in talk, creating opportunities for students to engage in structured dialogue throughout the learning process also increases equity and access for all students, but especially for those who are English language learners and those who are more reticent to speak out in a large group. Providing structure for dialogues can be done in multiple ways, such as including providing specific prompts to get students thinking and writing first, and then having a conversation, or employing protocols which require turn taking, something grown-ups are notoriously bad at, having students use whiteboards individually or in a group to make their thinking visible as they talk, providing sticky tags to allow for categorization in any discipline, or feedback for other students as they look at their work, and finally providing sentence frames or terms as scaffolds for students to be able to formulate and practice oral language before they write about it. All of these strategies can be employed digitally through breakout rooms, discussion boards, and various apps, which are in the resource box there, that allow students to post individual thinking or use as whiteboards. And now back to Nikki.
Our third best practice is to design a student-centered environment and curriculum. This does not mean that the teacher is not in charge, but that tasks and curriculum are designed with the interests and engagement of students foremost in mind. Generally, this means being mindful of building relationships with students in order to get to know them and understand their interests. From there, the student-centered classroom, even the digital variety, focuses on content examples that both interest students and are relevant to their world. This could mean choosing phenomena in science, task problems in math, literature in ELA, authentic materials for social studies, and so on. It also means offering students choice in how they learn and show their learning, and offering a range of media for both. It is critical that we hear our students' stories and meet them where they are. They need our help to make their work meaningful, and in a distance learning environment, this may be more important than ever before. Back to Ingrid.
A fourth best practice focuses on how we design learning tasks, even as we embrace all the other strategies. It's possible, though, to have engaging protocols, opportunities for dialogue and collaboration, and even a student-centered classroom without necessarily providing meaningful tasks for students. Only through the intentional development of inquiry processes and investigating phenomena, real-world ideas, are students likely to stay engaged, master factual content, apply that content to solve real-world problems, develop their own creativity, and develop higher-level thinking skills. What we mean by inquiry and phenomena-based are simply that there's larger overarching questions which require critical thinking to get to. There's simply not a list of content, and they're not just a list of skills, they're larger than that. Some effective tools for a regular classroom might include engaging students in I Notice, I Wonder protocols to prompt thinking and questioning. And then from there, effective teaching would use that thinking from students to inform real-world investigations designed by the teacher or the students in any subject, or it might be used to identify a project or problem-based learning sequence. These curricular approaches are best when focused on issues that students care about and find relevant in their world, and which are complex enough to require deep analytical thinking, but not so complex as to be overwhelming. A number of digital apps, partially listed on this slide, would allow teachers to translate these approaches into distance and digital learning.
And finally, all of these best practices are really in service of the primary goal we can't lose sight of as educators. that we want our students to develop the traits of our grad profile across the disciplines, that we want them to become fluent with text, numbers, and other forms of literacy, be able to explain or summarize a concept or text, be able to model or develop a system that explains phenomena and big ideas across the curriculum. Our universal design approach to designing units should begin with these big goals in mind and then work backwards to design lessons around these best practices to most effectively help students grow in these areas. In the next slide, Lizette will build upon the idea of engagement strategies to discuss and include culturally responsive teaching.
Hello, my name is Lisette Mancilla, and I am the school counselor at Montgomery Elementary School. When discussing student engagement, it is imperative to keep in mind and act on culturally responsive teaching. A culturally responsive teacher encourages a sense of belonging and helps create a safe space where students not only feel safe, but are respected, heard, and challenged. This is achieved through the 3 R's, being relationships, relevance, rigor, as well as embracing a student's cultural identity. In developing relationships, we need to understand the cultural nuances, norms, beliefs, and behaviors that are passed down from one generation to the next. The things that explain why a student might answer a question the way they do, why another might not feel comfortable looking you in the eye when you're speaking to them. Relevance can be achieved through examples, newspaper clippings, articles, song lyrics, plays, comics, video games, and other resources that reflect experiences, characters, settings, and themes our students can relate to. We need to employ a broader perspective of strategies to engage learners whose experiences and cultures are traditionally excluded from mainstream settings. To achieve a rigorous program, we must communicate and facilitate opportunities and support high expectations for all students. In addition to collaborating with different cultures and backgrounds found in the 21st century work environment. Cultural identity, potentially being one of the most important and impactful in student engagement, includes accepting student input and experiences to design your classroom environment, curriculum, and assessments. When students see their identities and interests reflected in the classroom, they are less likely to complete work because they have to, and more likely to be intrinsically motivated to complete the work and learn from it. Most importantly, we must leverage culture and student-teacher relationships to inspire students to want to learn. I will now turn it over to Liz Shoemaker.
Hi, my name is Liz Shoemaker, and I teach science at Emerson Junior High. I'm going to speak about assessment in a distance learning or hybrid model. It's important to remember that the purpose of assessment is to promote learning. When you're planning assessments for your students, you should first actually start with your learning goal in mind. What is it that you would like your students to know or do or feel? Then design your assessment based on your learning goal and know ahead of time what success on that assessment is going to look like. And after that, then design your lesson. All of these speak to each other, and they should all be working together within a social emotional awareness environment in your classroom. When you're selecting learning goals for your students, they need to be carefully selected, and you need to decide how those are going to be used to drive instruction. When we talk about assessment, we often focus just on grades, but it's important to remember that feedback is more important and more critical for learning than grading. Grading is just a measurement of a student's learning, but it doesn't encompass all of that. Feedback and grades are not the same thing. So when you're deciding what it is you're going to assess, we should first start with the essential standards, the critical standards for a grade level, for a course at the secondary level, and what those actual learning objectives are. And as I said, they could be knowledge or skills or attitudes. When designing the classroom assessment, keep the purpose of that assessment in mind. Is it for formative feedback or is it a summative assessment? And this is really critical in a distance learning model. Be flexible in how a student can show mastery of that learning objective. Is it more important that they demonstrate their knowledge or skill to you, or is the format what you're really assessing? When it comes to district-wide assessments, there's decisions that need to be made at a district level about what common assessments we're going to be continuing to use at both the secondary and elementary level. Having common essential standards for different courses is also going to make collaboration between teachers easier, and it'll add flexibility if students need to change sites or instructors for a course for whatever reason during the pandemic. Canvas offers us a lot of tools to help with assessment, but more important than what tools you use, whatever ed tech tools are available, it's more important that you understand why you're using it, what the purpose of it is. So keep that in mind as you're looking at all of the options that are available to you. Some of the things that Canvas offers, though, is the option to have ungraded assessments. You can tie assessments to learning outcomes and build rubrics for those, and that includes a mastery grading and a mastery grading gradebook. You can have students turn in assignments in different modes. They can be written or video or photo. There's actually multiple options, and you can give all of those options for one assignment to students, and they could choose how they want to show that they're understanding. You as an instructor also have multiple options for how you give feedback to students. You can record audio, you can record video, you can mark up an assignment or a document, or you can give traditional like Google Classroom comments and points as as feedback. Canvas also offers the option to split students into small groups for collaborative assignments, and Canvas links with all of the different ed tech tools that you've maybe heard of but don't know how to use. Those are available to, like, you can use them right within Canvas and assess students from using those. We've also linked here many different books and resources for universal design of learning, how to provide feedback, and culturally relevant practices. Keep in mind that all of these are really just good pedagogy, whether you are teaching in person or teaching in a distance model. And I'm going to pass the mic now to Janice.
Thank you, Liz. In the last few slides, you've been thinking a lot about assessment through the assessment inquiry cycle. We would like to capture some of those amazing ideas with the culturally responsive lens. The main takeaway being that assessment should be for learning, not of learning, and teachers should be allies and not judges. How we give feedback plays a big role in being culturally responsive. A teacher ally would give quality feedback. It is instructive rather than evaluative. It is specific and in the right dose. It is timely, and it is delivered in a low-stress, supportive environment. Zaretta Hammond explained a concept called WISE feedback. Through WISE feedback, we explicitly state the high standards. WISE feedback helps students understand that mistakes are a sign of the high demands of the academic task. We give a personal assurance to the student that they are capable and can improve with effort. Finally, we highlight specific actionable steps the student can work on. A teacher ally would keep in mind the science of learning, the progress principle. Neuroscience tells us the progress principle means that just by seeing progress, the dopamine level in our brain's reward center goes up, and our brain will encourage us to keep going. As a result, we will be able to persevere through more challenging tasks. In order to give quality and WISE feedback and utilize the progress principle, the teacher ally should embrace the importance of formative assessment. There is a strong link between consistent formative assessment and student agency. And finally, we invite everyone to rethink the environment of assessment to one of being high trust and low stakes. Thank you, and I would now like to introduce Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Janice. I'm Scott Thompson, principal of Emerson Junior High School and former social studies teacher, here to talk with you about engaging video conferencing and asynchronous learning interactions. Our spring experience highlighted the importance of face-to-face interaction with students. As we prepare for the fall, our goal is to improve those interactions that take place so that all students can be fully engaged. As we did in the spring, taking the time to connect with individual students is critical. Starting a session by having students share a thought, how they're feeling, or what they're looking forward to sets a positive tone for the session. This links with our work in social emotional learning and culturally responsive teaching. Think of ways that you connect with students in the classroom normally and find ways to adapt that to video conferencing. Carrie Fitzpatrick Gallis, one of our speech therapists, provided a document for families on how to set students up for success with online class sessions. Before we begin classes, there will be further guidance and expectations around online sessions for staff, students, and families. Breakout rooms or spaces are critical for small groups, paraeducator, and specialist support. And this capability will be available in the fall of 2020. Look for information soon about how these features will be used within our learning management system, Canvas. There are many asynchronous opportunities to engage with students. Many teachers created these opportunities within Google Classroom in the spring. That content will still be available and be able to be used through Canvas. There are many features available in Canvas that will make creating these engaging opportunities much more streamlined and easier. You will learn about these in the Canvas module. In the meantime, we invite you to think about how you can recreate some of the engaging features in your physical classroom to use in your digital classroom. The Engagement and Assessment team has begun to compile an annotated resource bank. Here we have posted articles, sample assignments, videos, and categorized them to make it easy to look for specific resources. Each of these resources has been vetted by the team and will continue to add new resources as they are discovered. Thanks for listening and engaging in this critical work. Now I'm going to hand it over to Lizette.
To conclude, it is essential to continue to grow your practice in culturally responsive teaching. U.S. surgeon and author Otto Gawande states, "Better is possible. It does not take genius. It takes diligence. It takes moral clarity. It takes ingenuity. And above all, it takes a willingness to try." Culturally responsive teaching is no longer a choice, but a mandate to all educators. There's no better time than now to make this change. So we're calling you all to action. As educators, we are charged with raising a new generation of children with methods and practices that speak to and recognize the diversity which represents the world that we live in. Keep reading and researching to improve your practice and keep a culturally responsive lens in everything you do.
We want to thank you for engaging with this module. We know that there is a lot to think about and consider with how we will facilitate learning in the fall. We can and will do great things together. Thanks to the incredible efforts of our engagement and assessment team. As you can see, we had a wide variety of expertise that contributed to this work. Thanks so much. We'll see you soon.